This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and the brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com. Hey guys, welcome to episode 54. This is our first official episode of 2018, and what a way to start off. We got Mike Hawkridge on the show today. As a lot of you guys probably know, our focus for 2018 is to pursue a moose, and we couldn't ask for a better guest to talk about moose hunting tips and tactics with, so we're going to spend most of our time on that, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the grizzly bear ban, moose orgasms, hunting with Joe Rogan. There's a very iconic photo of Joe with a moose quarter on his shoulder. I'm sure a lot of you guys know which one I'm talking about. Mike guided Joe on that hunt, so you're going to hear about that. And he's also going to share a story with us at the end, which is a close encounter with a wolf. It's pretty intense, so make sure you stick out all the way to the end of the episode for that one. If you guys want to support the show, you know how to do it. Go over to the website, which is therookihunter.com, and click on the store tab. We've got our t-shirts up there. You can also subscribe to the show. That makes a big difference. And also leave us a rating or review. I should also note that we're now on Spotify. So if you're a Spotify user, all you have to do is search us out and follow us, and you'll get all of our episodes. All of the links to our social media and everything is up on our website as well. So again, head over to therookihunter.com for all that stuff. Let's get into this episode. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 54 with Mike Hawkridge. Shall we start out with what's on tap?
Sure. Let me see. I just got to pick it up. This is something new. It's called Ballast Point Brewing Company.
From
San Diego.
San Diego.
That's different, eh?
Yeah.
We're going to California today.
Nice.
So this
That's
is
a first.
Yeah, it's called the Victory at Sea, and it's a porter with coffee and vanilla.
Yeah.
Appropriate for winter.
I've been shying away from the porters and stuff, but mainly because, well, they're just better in wintertime, so it's appropriate for today.
Yeah, and they look pretty good in these new glasses you got here.
Yeah. Shout out to...
these are like, what, whiskey glasses?
Yeah, I think so.
Glasses.
Yeah.
Marbles in my mouth. But they have like gold pheasants on them.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. These are courtesy of Rhonda for the
nice
for the studio. So yeah, here.
Sweet.
Cheers to 2018. This is our first time getting together this year. Well, in here anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Cal, what's new? You had a bit of a shit day.
Yeah, I don't know. A couple things, I guess. One is my DeLorme got stolen out of my truck, and the other one is my binos got stolen out of my truck.
Yeah.
And actually my dark energy charger.
Oh, that too, eh?
Yeah.
Damn.
So these three items I had in my truck because I was traveling back to trail. And I think we mentioned this on the show here, but I'm always like, I never have my binos on me unless I'm hunting. Yeah. And there's always some scenario that pops up where I wish I had my binos. So I'm like, whenever I have a road trip, I'm going to throw my binos in my console. Yeah. And then I threw my DeLorme in there because if you're traveling back and forth, you lose cell service. And we were up in mountain passes, so I thought, whatever, it's on. Know. I'm just going to throw it in there. Kind of self-explanatory, but kicking myself because multiple times I was like, bring that shit in the house. Don't leave it in your truck. Yeah. And sure enough, one day that I apparently forgot to lock my truck in the driveway, I go in there in the morning and everything's gone from the glove box. So shitty way to start the day, and overall just shitty. I don't know. And you kind of think about building your artillery for hunting gear and all that kind of stuff, and the next thing on the list was like a rangefinder and like kind of progressing. Yeah. And it kind of took 2 steps backwards.
Yeah, definitely. The shitty thing is, like, all three of those are sort of somewhat essential. Binos for sure. The inReach for the type of hunts that we do is also essential, just for peace of mind. I don't think we should be going to places like we did last year without one.
No. One option is renting, obviously.
Yeah.
But having the inReach and being able to contact people whenever you want, the quick message, as opposed to like, emergency phone calls. I don't know. I just like the messaging function.
Yeah, me too.
It'd be nice to have both, but I don't know. I like the device. It's just kind of shitty. So I do have the account on. Hopefully the person that stole it isn't listening to this. But what I'm going to do is there's a monitor and a track function on the online. So I'm going to check in every once in a while. And if they turn it on, then hopefully I can get a beat on where it is. And hopefully if I can, show up at their door, it's not the person they sold it to. And either way, like I got serial numbers on my on the box and also on the online account too. So
it's a bummer, man.
Yeah,
and
it's crappy.
The dark energy is kind of a safety thing too for charging phones and for those electronic devices, the inReach and the radios and all that kind of stuff. So
it's crappy, and obviously Bree's pissed, and everybody's just, I don't know, I kick myself too, but at the end of the day, I'm not the type of person that's going to sit there and
I can't dwell on it, man.
And all that. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's done.
Kind of learn from it and move on. It could have been a lot worse. My truck could have been gone.
Yeah. Should I share my truck story?
Yeah, you mentioned that too.
So I was trying to cheer Kelly up. I said it could have been worse. I've been broken into a few times. So I've learned my lesson and never really leave anything in there. But we had a new Tacoma at the time. Left it unlocked, same thing. And there was just kids going around. There were actually like a whole row of cars, like the street. All these windows had been smashed in and stuff like that. But anyways, we get up in the morning. We didn't know that anybody had been broken into. And we hop into the truck. Everything seems fine. This is the gross part. So I get in, all good. Ashley gets into the passenger seat. And she's like, well, what the hell? The seat is wet. I'm like, did you leave the window down? And then she goes, it's piss. Like she could just smell it right away. I'm like, no, there's no way. And then we checked the back seats. They had pissed all over the back seats and everything, man. So
who does that?
Insurance covered that, but we ended up selling that truck like months later because we're like, I don't know, something about it. We're like, I don't want this truck anymore. It's been pissed all. Even though the foam was replaced, the upholstery was all replaced and everything. We're just like,
man, you shouldn't have to worry about stuff like that, but
people are weird.
There's a couple assholes out there for sure.
Yeah. So I didn't have anything in there, so that was a score. But the urine on the seats is could do without that.
Well, you can't, even if you get it fixed, you can't get over it mentally. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it's just stuck in your head that somebody peed in there. Gross. Anyways, what time is it? So we're talking moose today. We have Mike Hawkridge on the show. We're going to give him a call in about 5 minutes here. A lot of people actually reached out to us even not too long after we started the podcast, Kelly, and said, you guys got to talk to Mike. He's a BC guide, and I think you guys really like talking to him, so on and so on. It kept coming up. I think at least 3 times we had people, reach out and say, you should connect with Mike. And we kind of just, we'll do it eventually or put us in touch, or we didn't really jump on it right away. And it turns out that Mike is actually the guy who took Joe Rogan moose hunting in BC, which is pretty interesting. And there's sort of an iconic photo of Joe Rogan with, I don't know if it's it must be the hind quarter.
Yeah, he's lifting it up on that.
He's got it up on his shoulder, yeah. And that is from the hunt that Mike took Joe on. So pretty cool. And I think he might have done, we'll find out, but I think they've done more than one hunt together. So that's kind of cool. And also found out, I was checking out the board of directors for BHA up here in BC. We've got a chapter that's active over the last, couple of years or so. He's also a part of that too. So pretty interested to hear his insights on from a outfitter perspective on things that are happening in BC and some of the challenges for us as residents and for him as a guide outfitter. So
For sure.
should be a good one. I think moose is the plan. That's why we're doing this episode for you and I. And we've seen moose. We've always bought a tag for a moose. We've never actually pursued a moose though.
No.
Just got it in the back pocket just in case.
Yeah, we've stumbled across some moose.
We sure have, yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to a moose hunt. I think the chance of success is a little higher, and it's a different method, right? Like it's a little more. I don't know. I feel like we can find a moose.
I think so too, man. We're still trying to figure out plans. I think this is going to be still not north like our last trip, but sort of mid central BC, not central, but halfway up there. Because even on the drive up and on the drive back, we saw quite a few moose. So I've got an idea of sort of like where that line is, where you start to see a lot of moose. It's always interesting because if you look at, where we were at this point a year ago and our plans to head north and how many times they changed. And then we decided to, stay in the South Okanagan, try something out around here. And then we were going back north and we were thinking about flying. We were all over the place. Yeah. And it's just like you're gathering information and you have to be open to sort of some change and different ideas and all that. So far it's me and you, and we're not sure who's coming with us. So
yeah, Garrett can't make it this year. So that's a bit of a change. And
yeah,
I don't know. We'll look at opportunities, maybe some other folks that have a bit of a rookie background.
Yeah.
There might be opportunity there. And I mean, that helps with our whole storyline too. So
yeah,
there's
definitely,
a bit of a, I don't know, there's an advantage taking folks out there and from the experience perspective, kind of working through the first time with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be cool.
Kevin, if you're listening, you should come.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
we need our mule back. I've never seen somebody pack quarters like that before.
Yeah, the elk quarters. Has he shot a moose?
No.
Okay.
I think he's got a deer under his belt and our elk.
Yeah.
Yeah. He shot the, can't remember if it was a mule or a whitetail with my old man with my rifle. Actually, this is way back before I even hunted. Maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. So,
right.
So I think Kelly's still in the rookie category with us, or Kevin, I mean.
Yeah. I feel like we got pretty close to a moose. Taking a moose down when we went on the sheep hunt there. It's just that we didn't find the right kind of moose. And we were right in the heart of it, though.
Yeah, for sure.
You can tell that was moose country.
Definitely was. Well, we're right on 5 o'clock. You could probably hear the clock tower ringing in the background. Should we give Mike a call?
For sure.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Mike. It's Mike and Kelly here.
Hey.
How you doing?
Hey, Mike.
Good.
Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, of course. We're just saying before we got rolling here that for quite a while, actually, you guys have been reaching out through us on Instagram, saying you got to talk to Mike over and over again. So I'm glad that we finally made this happen. I think lots of guys are going to be excited to see that you're on the show.
Cool.
Yeah. So as I just mentioned there, we're going to be talking about moose today, I think is the focus. But before we jump into that stuff, if you don't mind just giving us an introduction, let us know who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, I guess my name is Mike Hawkridge. I'm a guide outfitter and a rancher. I live up here in central British Columbia. Our kind of main base of operation here is about 45 kilometers west of Quesnel, actually headed out towards Nazco.
Nice.
That's currently what I do, and currently who I am.
Perfect.
Awesome. How long have you been guiding, Mike?
I guess I started about the mid-'90s. It wasn't long after I got out of school. When I grew up, I was raised fairly remote, and when I hit high school, it was kind of time to. I kind of got thrown to the wolves and just kind of thrown into public school, and it was a lot to take. So by the time I was finished school, I got accepted to college, and I'd made plans, and at the same time there was an outfit that was looking for an extra hand, and the thought of just hitting the hills. I didn't really have anything to do with guiding up until that point, but the thought of just getting away was something that I needed to do, and I wasn't sure where it was going to lead me, but I jumped on that. So right from about the mid '90s, I got started guiding and just never looked back.
Nice,
Awesome.
Was hunting a pretty big part of your upbringing as well, then, or?
Yeah, it was definitely. It was different because we were just hunting for the freezer. I mean, I was with my dad, and plenty of big racks were left out there because he didn't eat them, and that was just the way it was. I remember as a kid being torn. I'd see this huge bull moose, and but bringing the antlers back just didn't make sense because we were packing everything out on our backs, and so it would have been an extra trip, and so it just wasn't something. It was just something that went back to the critters. But yeah, that's I grew up that way, and filling our freezer was kind of number one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So your outfit there, how many guys you got working out of there?
Working, there's usually only 4 or 5 of us guiding. We have a couple of cooks as well, and it's not a monster big outfit. I've worked for larger outfits, but this one in particular, we have 2 different guide areas, and so there's a little bit of logistics involved with moving back and forth. But probably 4 or 5 guys anyway that are kind of core guys that work with me.
Nice. Yeah. So on our last episode there, we talked a bit about the ban on grizzly bears here in BC, grizzly bear hunting, I should say. And when we did that episode, I think it was only 2 days after the news had just been announced. And I think, as most people, we were pretty shocked with the outcome there. Curious your thoughts as you're a BC resident and also a guide outfitter. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm fairly vocal about it, all right. Very, very opinionated. I was kind of surprised a little bit, but then also when I took a look at what happened up at Site C and the fact that, that they allowed that to go through. And so any environmentalists that were kind of on board with them obviously were uncomfortable. So the grizzly bear was an easy bone to throw them. I was not happy at all. We had long talked about the fact of hauling all edible portions out, and I'm not sure anybody was ever against that.
Right.
That was something that everybody was well on board with. And I mean, just to know that's the direction that possibly our wildlife management is going in, it was really upsetting because there's just simply zero science.
Yeah.
There's no science behind it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it was the urban vote that they were appealing to, and it's scary because it's not just the grizzly bear. It's not just it's just what the grizzly bear stands for. It was a species that that these people kind of decided to champion. And so what's next? I mean, is it going to be our mule deer? Is it going to be our bighorn? Is it going to be a stone sheep? We all seen, I'm certain you guys seen it as well. Just recently, cats were in the news, after that cougar was killed. And it was kind of, the timing was about right. Everybody's out there killing cats right now. And it was unbelievable. It was chaos as soon as that went viral on that was the new animal. So, it's super, super, concerning, because there's not even any mention of something like access. If we want to start talking about bears and populations and numbers and habitat, our province is getting chopped up into little pieces at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
But there's no concern that way. That's not sexy enough to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's certainly alarming. And like you say, what's next? It seems like it's going to be one thing after another. We've sort of talked about what the solution is to stop this, but we're not really sure what that answer is. Do you have any ideas on what we can do as a community to make sure that this doesn't continue?
Well, I think basically, I mean, we're kind of at a funny position, and of course this is my opinion. And but the way I view it is, probably for at least the last 40 years and maybe even longer, wildlife within British Columbia, again, my opinion, has been mismanaged, or just a lack of management in many cases, proper management. And so it's a difficult thing for, what happens now. Our government now steps up and says, oh, guess what? We came up with a really good idea. Let's start managing with science, so meanwhile, BC residents go, well, that's great, but what have you been doing up until this point? So it's kind of a tough position to be in. I think it's going to be groups coming together, user groups coming together. And that means, the BC residents, the guide outfitters, First Nations, just everybody somehow coming together and coming up with some really good ideas. I think that the government would probably be open to that. I'm not sure with the current government, but I'm just as the government as a whole. They might look for something like that. They might look for some sort of leadership, some sort of group coming together with some recommendations, and I think really that's probably going to be the only way that they can move towards more of a scientific method of management and save face at the same time, because they're going to be focused on doing that as well. So somehow I think we need, everybody to kind of come together, a large collective voice. We all want the same thing.
Exactly.
We want healthy wildlife, healthy wild places for the wildlife. We're all after the same thing. Yeah. So how do we realistically get there? And I think that the government's looking, or at least willing to listen to some of that. And I think if we were able to, I think that really that's the only way we're going to be able to do it, because I think if we continue to rely on our government for leader, I think we're going to see more of the same. Like, it's going to be the next animal, whatever happens to be popular in the moment. God forbid they decide to make the wolf their next, cute and cuddly animal, because we could all be in serious trouble then. Yeah,
for sure. I think Mike and I have kind of thought about the social media aspect quite a bit too, and we've tried to, as much as we like to post our photos and do that kind of thing and we understand it, that it's an achievement and a lot of time and effort that goes into doing what we do, but a lot of these, like the cougar and a couple other examples, even with the grizzly bear, someone posts a picture and it kind of starts this whole tornado, this media storm, and a lot of people use that as ammunition against us. So I don't know, I agree totally that it we need all these parties to get together and have a conversation first. And it seems like in the social media world, that photo gets, that's the first thing people see, and then it's hard to have that conversation afterwards. So I don't know, that's one thing we've noticed in the last little bit here.
Yeah, and I completely agree. We do it all the time. I mean, it's even part of my business. It's what we kind of do. But we also are as respectful as we possibly can to the animal. It's just something that we believe in doing. And I get it. I mean, I get it. Nobody wants to, they want to say, I don't care what those people think. They can, shove it up there. I'm going to leave this tongue hanging out. That's fine. That's fine. I understand. But, it's just not that pretty, and it's kind of offensive.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe not to us, but there's no doubt about it. I mean, I have some great back and forth conversations with a fellow that I've known. He lives down in Vancouver. He's very super emotional. He's a very, very smart dude. He writes for the Huffington Post.
Okay.
He's a talented dude. I like him a lot, but he's pretty much as anti-hunting as you can get, and he gets highly emotional. And he'll grab this stuff, and I swear that I'm reading his posts and that they're dripping with tears. I mean, he doesn't deal well with this, and part of it is, he said, you got to quit jamming this down our throats.
Right.
And I kind of get it. I do kind of get it. when, it is difficult. It's a personal thing. We've just always found that for us and what we do, we just keep in mind that we're not the only ones that are going to be viewing these photos. And once you put them out there, they're out there forever. And and the other thing is these goofballs that are going out there with their cameras and filming some of this stuff. I mean, God, I'm certain you guys maybe have seen some of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But the amount of damage that causes, it doesn't matter whether or not it's a legal hunt or an illegal hunt.
Yeah.
It's the pure emotion that somebody feels. So when they look at a picture afterwards, and it's the old grip and grin, and they can feel something, but when they actually witness something almost live, that's a completely different level of upsetness. Like they're just not happy with what they just witnessed, and they get pretty passionate about putting a stop to it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think I don't think we should, have to stop posting photos, but like when we post something, we try and do a good job of, explaining the story behind it and what it means to us. And, I think a lot of guys will just post something without any sort of description or backstory. And it allows people to sort of make their own opinion and their own story behind that photo. So that's where we have to be careful, I think.
Isn't always the best thing. Yeah. But to get back to the conversation and talking and gathering is, and we've discussed this a couple times too, is if we get a panel together and kind of put ourselves in front of, a local pub or going to a place like Whistler or something like that and having conversations, that would be a great place to go with this, I think.
Right. No, I think you're right.
Yeah. Conversations is the best way to do it. So I think the more we talk to people, the further ahead we're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to have that percentage that talking with them. I might have these conversations. I know plenty of people and interact with plenty of people that have nothing to do with hunting or fishing or anything that way. Of course, especially hunting. But, a lot of times just that conversation, just talking to me and realizing that I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
I'm not some murdering, psychopath. They were just able to kind of put it a little bit better into context and realize that, okay, there's a lot about it that they don't understand. Maybe it's not exactly for them at this moment, but maybe they're not so against it. And that said, I've had, conversations with people that are, very emotional and very charged up and that's fine. That's their opinion and that's the way they feel. And you know what? You need a little bit of darkness with the light, I guess.
Yeah,
for sure. Mike, I guess based on this conversation, we should mention that you're also on the board of directors of the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in BC.
Yes.
And how long have you been with them?
I've known about them for quite a while. In fact, before they came to British Columbia, we would talk a little bit. I really liked what the organization stood for and just, again, it kind of wraps around to access and healthy habitat and healthy wildlife. And, so when we first started talking, really British Columbia was, we were still pretty spread out. In fact, even though we were able to bring a chapter into British Columbia, we are still really spread out because basically we've got a very active group down in the Cranbrook and Kootenay area, which is fabulous and great, and then there's me.
Right.
And so currently right now we're hoping to increase membership and maybe get some things started further north here. So I really keep posted. I'm definitely not as active simply because currently right now it's just all about kind of driving some membership and some interest up and getting some people on board so that we can start to sit down and have some conversations about it. And that said as well, I'm a part of quite a few different organizations, all basically interested in exactly the same thing. So it's all good. I'm always busy doing something pertaining to wildlife and moose in particular.
Yeah, for sure. I think Callie and I have sort of been talking about the possibility of getting involved with the BHA, and there's no representation here in the Okanagan either. So maybe we should talk with you more about this at another time too, and see if we can get involved and try and help out to get those memberships up and more stuff happening in BC. What kind of issues are you guys talking about right now?
I think regionally, it's that's kind of the big thing. I mean, for me up here, I'm still basically on the whole access. Moose populations are big. The grizzly bear thing has been something everybody's been talking about.
Yeah.
But that's basically how things have been kind of broken up as of right now. Is just more kind of regionally. So down in the Kootenays, there's issues. Obviously, there is some road density issues and stuff that way. So those guys have done a good job working with one another and working with local government to try and address some of their deals. And currently, right now, we just don't have the numbers that we could have in the interior to start to get strong representation with some of the things that are important to the backcountry hunters and anglers.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is really absolutely important to every one of us as outdoorsmen.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, while we're talking about moose, we might as well transition into our next topic here. Kelly and I, we did a trip up north. We're up north of Fort Nelson there for a trip this year, and we saw a lot of moose. We weren't pursuing moose, but it kind of got the gears turning, and a moose hunt is something we've never done. So our goal for 2018 is to go after a moose. So if you're into it, we want to talk some tips and tactics here with you.
Sure, you betcha. I'll share anything I can.
Cool. So we'll kind of start from the beginning here and kind of go through some different topics. But what are you looking for? If you're looking from mine and Kelly's perspective, when you're choosing a location. So I think we're going to be heading, central BC. We're going to leave the Okanagan, kind of looking towards the Caribou Peace region, because we saw a lot of critters up there. So when you're scouting out new locations and looking at maps and stuff like that, what kind of stuff are you looking for?
Well, it's a little bit different with me. I'm going to have to put myself in strict BC resident mode, which resident hunter. It's very interesting because typically I don't get a chance to do as much firsthand hunting as I'd like to.
Right.
We're very busy that time of year. And the other thing that's actually really challenging, nobody really talks about, is from an outfitter perspective. If I choose to go, which we can and we do, travel throughout British Columbia, we also have to kind of, sort of pay attention to exactly where we are. Because, you could be in somebody's, territory, chances are you are somewhere.
Right.
You have to, a lot of times it's worth a reach out and say, hey, look, and sometimes that's welcomed, and other times, maybe the outfitter's like, whoa, wait a minute here, like, what are you doing coming in here? So it's an interesting dynamic. But basically, what I can do, so what I'll do right now is I'll also just kind of look at it from, okay, we've just bought a brand new territory, so we're going to take a look at it, and we don't really know much about it,
Sure.
So let's take a look. So, one of the things that I try and focus on is if it's an area that is fairly roaded, we start looking for spots that are a little bit off the beaten path. That's the way we like to hunt, and that typically I would say is probably increases your success rate, is to just kind of get away a little bit from the traffic, and then from there, once you take a look at some of the maps and as kind of cliche as it may sound, you think about a moose on the edge of some water, whether that's a pond, a lake, or a swamp or something like that. But that's where you find them.
Right.
That's where they are. That's where they feed. So I would start looking for places like that. I would start looking for wet areas, lowlands, but that would also depend on the time of year. I'm not sure when you guys were further up north, but if it was early season, then you're going to run into moose up higher. They'll be higher in elevation earlier in the season, but then as you get closer to the rut, and my suggestion would be wherever you're going to pick, however you're going to do this, whether you're looking at a limited entry draw or whatever, I would really try and focus on a rut hunt. It's going to increase your odds, and the moose are going to be moving at that time. They're going to be moving around. So timing is important. Obviously, I want to pick a spot that hopefully if I'm doing my research, I'm picking a spot that has high density, like high moose numbers, even if it's somewhat historically, this area was really well known for moose perfect, then that's kind of where I want to start snooping around. Right. And, so if I'm going to assume that you're headed into a rut hunt, then that's what I'm going to be looking for, is a little bit off the beaten path, and I'll be looking for kind of those lowland, wet areas, swamps, and cut blocks work well, but especially if they kind of edge along a swamp area or a wet area, that's typically where I'll kind of get started there anyway, and then start kind of honing in from there.
Right. And as far as the rut goes for moose, does it align well with the like deer rut? I know with mule deer and whitetail, it's got a little bit separated by, I don't know, it seems like a few weeks at least, but what about is the moose rut?
We don't typically, I don't start hunting moose typically until about October the 1st. Our falls have been getting warmer, and these are big animals. They're big 1,200 pound animals, and they're built more for the cooler temperatures than they are for warm temperatures. So, typically right around that 1st of October in there, it pretty much, it increases my chances that they're going to be talking. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more vocal even the last week of September, but when I start booking our hunts, I start focusing more on around that October the 1st, and that way I know they're going to be talking. Right. I know it's going to be the right time to be out there.
Right, and calling is a major aspect at that time, I assume.
Yeah, moose are, they're obviously pretty friggin' quiet animals until you get at the right place at the right time. And I've had plenty of people that will listen to me call, and the first time they hear a moose call, my own wife, this was many years ago, but I took her out and I was priming up an area. So I brought her out. We were so quiet. We went out in this little boat on this little lake, and we made our way through all these little islands. And I got to the end of the lake where it was looking really good, and the swamp continued on for probably 2 miles. And so I thought, I got a hunt coming. I'm just going to kind of get this primed up for a couple of days and see if I can't raise some interest. And she was sitting behind me in the boat, and I stood up towards the bow and let out my first long, mournful cow call, and she busted a gut. I just went home after that because she was laughing so hard. There was no self-respecting bull was going to be poking his head out. And she said, they don't sound like that. And I said, well, what do you think they sound like? Of course they sound like that. But she'd never heard anything like that. Right. And this was many, many, many years ago. But that same reaction I get, for anybody that doesn't know a lot about moose and they come up here and hunt with us, I start cow calling, and the looks I get are, what is that? What are you trying to call in? But when it happens and they get at the right place at the right time and they listen to how vocal moose can actually be, it's pretty surprising. They actually make quite a bit of noise when the time is right.
Are you using basically just your voice in your hands, or are you?
Yeah, that's what I use. I don't. Okay. You can use the I guess the birch bark cone or I guess there's a fiberglass cone or whatever. And
yeah. The Tim Hortons. The Tim Hortons tin with the shoelace?
No. You never want to do that. You never want to do that. And I'll tell you why. And this is kind of one of my little secrets, and probably anybody that's done any moose hunting for any length of time is going to go, well, it's not a secret. But for somebody that hasn't done a lot of it, they will get out there and they'll hear people, make those bull grunts, and for me that is a huge no. I won't do that unless I truly have to use a bull grunt. I won't do it. There's a lot of different things that are going on out there that you may not understand, and so with a bull grunt, there is the odd time where it's going to work and you're going to bring a bull charging in, but there's going to be plenty of other times where what you're going to do is you're going to screw yourself over. Right. Typically with a bull grunt, any bull that's within the area that's going to think about coming in, typically what happens is he starts going for the wind. And there's just no way you're going to ever smell enough like a bull not to scare him off. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I've called bulls in on a cow call about 1.5 miles away. We spotted them, and I'll start cow calling, and we have brought them right into us at a trot, at a non-stop trot, and they come in on a string, and the hunter ends up saying, that should be illegal. I said, well, it doesn't happen like that all the time. But thankfully it happened like that this time. But the cow calls will keep them literally coming straight into the call. And they seem to pay a lot less attention to the wind. But if I want to switch it up, and for whatever reason, maybe I've got a head-on presentation and I'm looking for something a little bit more broadside, I could use a bull call and switch it up, because at that moment, he could start to display, and then obviously he's going to start traveling in towards the wind, and that could give you your opportunity. But I'm really, really careful with bull calls. So that classic, my dad had one when I was a kid, and he would have that tin can, piece of string in there, give a good jerk, it let out a wah, and we never did get a reply, but that's what everybody did.
Right.
But that, and of course there was probably, we were always successful, but it was probably strictly due to moose density rather than actual skill.
Yeah. Right.
The cow calls, practicing your cow calls, I think that's going to be what really changes things and puts them in your favor.
That's good news, because I was wondering where to even put a huge Tim Hortons tin.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you wear it on your head?
Our backpacks are heavy enough as it is. Never mind putting a Tim Hortons can in there.
Yeah.
I have in this I've seen, and it kind of makes a little bit of sense to me. I've seen people take that old bleach bottle and kind of cut the bottom out of it, and they'll use that as a little bit of a megaphone. So they can kind of get their lips wrapped around that.
Okay. Yep.
They'll use it as a bit of a megaphone. Also, surprisingly, when you hold the handle of that bleach bottle and kind of rake it, it's amazing how close it sounds. It's surprising. And then on top of that, they'll take that bleach bottle and you can use it like a big scoop. So you basically put your hand on the top end where you'd put your lips, and you seal that off. And you can, if you're near water, you can actually fill that full of water, lift it up to about 5 feet off the ground, like off the edge of the lake, and dump it back in as though you were a cow moose pissing in the water.
Huh.
And so I've seen that bleach bottle kind of be a multi-use tool, and that actually kind of works.
Interesting. So with cow calling, this might be better suited to video, but can you describe sort of the technique behind it and maybe give us an example of what that might sound like?
I probably could.
Okay.
I can do what I can, but what I'm going to have to do is just kind of prop the phone up, because I'm going to have to use both hands. And
sure.
How well it's going to come out, who knows?
We'll see.
But basically what I do is I'll do these calls, and then I'll probably wait I don't overcall. I might wait 8 to 10 minutes in between calls,
right.
And I don't beat it up too badly, because I know that a bull could be as far as 2 miles away. Sometimes they'll come trucking in. Other times it could take them a while. They could start talking. You're not going to maybe hear it right away. They could start kind of doing a little bit of low grunting and making their way towards you. So I just remain patient, and I use that long cow call, and I space it probably 8 to 10 minutes between. So, but what I'll do here is I'll prop the phone up, and I'll be as loud as I can be.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Okay, just a sec.
Okay.
All right. So right now I've just made my way to the edge of a small pond, and I'm going to give a call out there and see if I can locate anything. How was that?
Perfect.
That came through good.
We'll use that as a reference and start practicing.
Yeah. I was actually, like, the first note actually sustained longer than I thought. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we were trying to do this when we were up north, but we weren't holding that note long enough, I don't think.
Yeah, you can hold it for quite a while. They make quite a bit of noise.
I'd imagine if you were out in the bush and you'd never heard a moose before, you might think that was a Sasquatch coming after you.
Yeah, I mean, it's an odd call.
Yeah.
It's it's really funny, because as guides, we've done some things again, this is guide talk, right? So a lot of guides talk about this thing called the orgasm call.
Okay.
And whether or not that's an actual call, I don't know, but we've witnessed it. So we've witnessed a cow being bred by a bull, and her call is just crazy. Now, there's been some different some different times. Like there was one point where we were talking to a bull, and he was kind of up the hillside, quite a ways away from us, too far for a shot. And we were going to try and close the distance, but we knew dropping down the ridge and climbing up the other side, we were now in that thick, heavy brush. Trying to locate him was going to be difficult. So the plan was to kind of bring him towards us. So he was up above a cow, and he didn't really have that much interest in her. And so I was cow calling, and he knew she was there. And he just, I guess he must have known that his time would be right with her, and he wasn't willing to part from her. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to throw in a little bit of competition, and I'll see what happens. I mean, we could watch him. He was probably out there at 400 yards, just not a shot that the hunter was comfortable with. So I said, let's not risk that shot. Let's try and bring him in closer. And so I started to bull grunt, and I got pretty aggressive with a little bit of raking. So I started to rake the willows beside us. And that old bull, he threw his head up, and this is a big bull. He threw his head up, and he come marching down the hill. I said, well, there we go. That's what it was. And he kind of scooped down. The cow was facing to the left. She was at the bottom of the hill in a little clearing, and he scooped down behind her. He didn't even think about saying please or asking if she was, what type of mood she was in. He just jumped on her. And when he did, her call was incredible. I mean, it was real pitchy, highs, lows, all over the place.
Oh, wow.
And he bred her until she laid down on him.
Huh.
And then he just turned around and started to grunt and walked right out of our life.
Jeez.
That was it. He was done. He didn't even care we were there. So it was an incredible thing to witness. And she laid down for a while. She had no interest in standing back up. So it was crazy. So that didn't work at all. And there was another instance where, I went into this place, and we call it the bull's bedroom. So we made it into the bull's bedroom, and I could tell he was right there. He's here somewhere.
Right. But
he wouldn't come to a cow call. Like he had no interest, and to the point where, we weren't even hearing sticks breaks. And finally, I was kind of scratching my head. I thought, okay, well, what do I got to lose? I'll just let out one little bull grunt, see what happens. I let out a bull grunt. Not only did he stand up about 80 yards away, but a bull that was laying right beside him stood up, and this was in the peak of the rut. And so just when you think you know what the rules are and how the game's played,
right,
they go and change it up.
Jeez. Yeah, the things you witness when you're out there, you never know what to expect.
Yeah.
No, and that's really what, for me, it's all of that keeps me running back out there year after year, because I get to see so much. And you just never truly know what each season is going to bring.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So you mentioned raking. If you're cow calling, is that something you should avoid only if you're doing bull call, or how does that work?
Okay, so I definitely have, typically I'll pack a paddle, and as goofy as that may look, it kind of doubles as a bunch of things. For one, if you have the right length of paddle, you could actually use it as a bit of a shooting stick. If you had to drop your rifle on, say, the handle or whatever, and you could kind of brace yourself a little bit better.
Right.
But also, very fortunately, is that bulls can't count, so they don't realize that you're only holding up one paddle. All they see is a paddle. So if you ever get into a surprise situation where you're walking into a spot, and we've had it happen on numerous times where, the bull was there, we didn't realize, and maybe we either spooked him up, and he went to leave, and he stopped to quickly look over his shoulder. At that point, I would say, okay, I'm busted anyway, so if I'm going to slow him down, I'll throw that paddle up to mimic the paddle of a bull, and I'll start to display and grunt. And a lot of times that'll kind of make them second guess and give us an opportunity at a shot. And then there are times where I definitely, if I'm doing a lot of cow calling, I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of raking at the same time.
Right.
But, there could be a time where I'll cow call and cow call and cow call, and just not much is going on. And instead of bull grunting, I might go over and just kind of lightly rake a little bit, almost like I'm kind of a young bull, that's trying to get this cow kind of interested.
Right.
So the cows will also make kind of a disapproval call. She'll sound a little bit pissy, like she's not happy. And a lot of times that's going to be if she's got a really young bull hanging around. So she doesn't doesn't want, for some reason she recognizes that he's young and she's just not interested in him. And so he'll make advancements and she gets a little bit snotty about it. So her calls sound just a little bit more stressed. And sometimes if you can get that just right, then a bull will come out on the trot because he's, basically, whoa, young man, stand aside. So, so sometimes we'll use that. So we'll do some cow calling, and then the raking that we will do might just be kind of light, just kind of like we're a young bull kind of playing with the willows a bit. I'm always careful about once I do switch over to a bull for whatever reason. And sometimes it's just hey, there's nothing else going on anyway, let's give this a shot. But I recognize that if I sound like a big dominant bull, and the bull that happens to be in the area just had his ass handed to him, he's going to be pretty careful about coming charging in. He could sneak around. He could peek around a corner. He might be a little bit more careful. So instead of sounding like you're the, big 55-inch bull, you may want to sound like you're more like a 45-inch.
Right. This question is kind of based on just the size of the animal, but Mike and I obviously like backpacking and bringing our buddy
well,
has the teepee tent, like the kafaro with the stove and all that kind of stuff. But we're thinking with the moose hunt, ATVs and wall tents seems like maybe a little safer option. But what do you suggest as far as pack out distance and all that kind of stuff?
Well, that's the reason I laughed about liking that, because if you're hauling out a bull, you'd better like throwing it on your back. I'm not a huge user of ATVs at all. I think they do have their place, especially when it comes to retrieval.
Right.
I'd hate to think of somebody not being able to get their animal out and losing it due to that.
Yeah.
So they're definitely super handy. They can be, and we have used them. We've gotten into situations where that was the best option. But for the most part, obviously I'm a rancher, so I got a pile of horses and I'm feeding them anyway, so I got to get them doing something.
Right.
But there are just some spots in many occasions where it just makes more sense. I just start throwing quarters, and I'm built to pack. I'm pretty fortunate that way. I've packed some pretty big packs in the past, and I wouldn't suggest it for everybody, but definitely quarters. Quarters are manageable. When you're breaking quarters off, you can tie them to a pack board, and they're heavy, but we've had some pretty lengthy packs out. Most of that was more due to maybe a shot that wasn't exactly what it could have been, and the animal traveled a bit. And even if you do everything right and say, let's just back off, and this animal won't be that far come morning or a few hours later, whatever it is. Sometimes you call it wrong for whatever reason. They decide to travel a bit further. So packing those ones out, what would start out to be a 400-yard pack is now a 2-mile pack, and that super sucks. But you do what you have to do.
Right.
2 miles, Mike.
Oh man! Well, that's why when you said you like to backpack, if you're going after moose, boy, you're going to really enjoy it. They're big animals, and you got to take them out in fairly big chunks. But it's also super cool.
Yeah, he's a little bit worried about going out with me because I like to suffer a little bit, and I'm more likely to pull the trigger on something when we're a little further back there.
And we were about 10 miles.
Yeah, we were ways back there.
I mean, I picture that as a disaster, but
well, I mean, definitely depending on the temperatures, but also in that particular area where you were at, I imagine if you're looking at a multi-day type thing, even if you have it all broke apart so it's cooling, and the weather's allowing that a little bit. Yeah, I imagine you're going to have a visitor on it before too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing. Like, I guess, what's the best way if you find yourself in a scenario where it's a multi-day pack out? How would you approach that one to avoid predators, mainly grizzly bears? Well, I mean, depending on where you're at, sometimes there's no avoiding it. They're going to be there. Yeah. I've had really good luck. There's been plenty of times. I mean, a lot of moose hunting, the happy hours are either, right before
it gets too bright out, so maybe the first hour or two in the morning and then the last hour of the evening. So we've had it where we're, opening them up and skinning them and all that in the dark with headlamps. But as far as it goes to packing them out, that can be a little bit more challenging and more dangerous, because if you've got a 150-pound pack on and you can't see your footing as well as you should, I mean, one twisted knee out there and you're just as much grizzly bait as the moose on your back. So so there are times where we end up having to leave it out. I've had pretty good luck. One of the things, just having your scent around there helps. We don't leave it there for an extended period of time, but having your scent out there and maybe leaving a t-shirt or something like that just kind of draped over the nose or the antlers or something,
right.
Helps. I mean, ultimately, if the bear says, screw this, man, this is a buffet, I'm there.
Right.
And we keep that in mind. Some of the areas there's less scent movement than others. Like if you're up on a hillside and you're up there a little ways and things are cooling off, a lot of times with those, a lot of times the wind will turn and start blowing kind of down into the valley bottoms. And so anything down there, is going to catch wind of this. So depending on where the animal's at, we just kind of piece together a big profile of that situation and go, okay, well, actually this is an area where it's kind of low scent travel. We also try and pay attention on whether or not we're in a high bear traffic area. And there's some areas that are. And if you're seeing, bear tracks everywhere and, piles that look like there's been elephants walking around in there,
right.
you know that there's bears in there and you want to be a little bit careful about that. It's tough. And we'll definitely, when we start breaking the moose apart, or elk or whatever it is that we've got, I won't leave it near the gut pile. I kind of leave something almost easy for the bear,
right.
and then try and move the quarters away, just a little ways away so that maybe the bear might go on the gut pile to start with.
Right.
But it's real sketchy, and we've claimed animals back. And again, that's a really case-by-case type thing. I mean, that can be super duper sketchy as well.
Right.
Every bear is going to be different. Every situation is going to be different. And we try and read it out. We try and read it. I've done some different things to see how secure the bear was in his situation. Sometimes something as simple as a few wolf howls, that'll be enough to startle him and he'll go, I don't want any part of this. Well, that was simple. So then we can just go in and do what we got to do. And then there's other times where, the bear will actually, kind of, move out maybe towards our direction and we start looking at the setup and, I'm like, wow, like we're screwed here. Like there's no way that we can get this guy to budge. We've even fired rifle shots off and they just look your direction. They don't really care. So you realize at that point, either the bear's going to get hurt or killed or you're going to get hurt or
right.
killed. And you got to decide whether or not that's worth any of that. And obviously if something does claim, get back and talk to your conservation officers, let them know what happened and where it happened and,
right.
and go from there. So I would just, do everything you can to obviously get that animal out. But when you're talking about a big animal, there is times where it might have to stay in there. Typically, whether or not it helps, I don't know. We'll sometimes light a little fire. We know that they kind of don't like that smell. I'll leave one of my t-shirts maybe hanging on, and we've had super good luck with bears. And even if there was one kind of in the vicinity, if we happened to be going back into that area and made lots of noise and certainly paid attention to the wind on how we approached and just did everything we could for the bear to make the right decision, we've had really good luck so far.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. We've listened to Steve Vernella's episode on the hanging tree there, and he obviously had a bit of a situation with a bear up, I think it was in Alaska, but I think one of the key messages I got from them and Remy Warren was, if you're going through all these motions and you never run into a bear, then you're doing something right. Just keep doing that stuff. You don't want to get lenient with that and appreciate the risk.
You also don't want to be overconfident either.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I meant for sure.
No, and if you are, you just haven't seen enough.
Yeah.
When you see a bear big enough that he's able to grab a moose and drag it where he needs to feel comfortable to then lay on top of it. You realize, these are, huge, massive animals, and they're eating machines. You don't want to be part of their menu.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, like I said, it's so difficult. It's kind of regionally. It's, everybody knows, for example, if you're dealing with, you see all these beautiful National Geographic pictures of these brown bears. They're huge. They're massive, 10-foot bears. And, they're up and down a fish choked river, and they're feeding really well. And there's people taking pictures, and it all looks beautiful. Well, now suddenly you kind of travel inward, and you get into one of these interior bears, and this guy might only be a 9-foot bear, but he's going to carry a 9-foot attitude. Like his life is a lot different than that brown bear that gets to feed on salmon for 10 months out of the year.
Right.
This guy's got to be a little bit more proactive at making things part of his menu. So you're just dealing with a different animal, and like I said, I mean, we had one come into camp a couple years back. And our meat pole was only, 50 yards from the camp. And he came in, my guide woke up, and he woke me up. He was very startled, and he said, "Listen." And I could hear the bear pulling on the quarters. We had some moose quarters hanging up, and I could hear the ropes creaking. Here we go. So I said, "Okay, well, I got to see what we're dealing with." So we had our shotgun as protection. So I got to see what we're dealing with. I want to get an idea. Try and hold the light steady. I want to see, what's going on. And so we came up out of the wall tent and kind of hooked around, and he got the light on him right away. And the bear wasn't happy about it. He let out a couple barks, and he wasn't very happy. But just our presence and how forward we were was enough that kind of pushed him off. And so I knew, I was smart enough to realize, well, he's not done for the night, but he respects us enough to know that, he's going to come as far as the meat pole. And really there wasn't anything we could do besides, sit up all night, which in fact we did do for a little while. But he was just so careful, like he was watching everything, and he would wait, and you'd just get in and get tucked into your sleeping bag and start to warm up again, and you'd hear the ropes creaking. Oh, jeez. So anyway, I wasn't about to just start, opening fire. I mean, there could be times too where you end up, spooking the bear into a charge, or just, scaring the living hell out of your clients. So,
right.
So anyway, he was a very well-behaved bear, minus the fact that he basically ate 2 quarters as they hung there. And it was a big bear because we had the quarters up about 5 feet, and it was, I mean, of course they can stand up, but when you're dealing with big quarters, when you can get them up that high, you're still, if you can get them up 8 feet, great. But we had them up about 5-6 feet is as far as we could kind of lift them. And so we got up in the morning, and he had done a little bit of damage to a few quarters. So we got the meat out that day. We decided, okay, look, it's a bit of a hassle, but we're not going to encourage this type of behavior.
Yeah.
And I set up some trail cams, and we actually got pictures of him coming right back. There was a specific tree that he would kind of come up and sit down and stare at camp.
Oh, wow.
And he would do it during the night, and he would sometimes follow us out. You would see our tracks,
Jeez.
and we'd have a grizz track behind us on our tracks as he followed us out as we went out for the day's hunt. And when we come back, his tracks were on ours, and then he would circle back around. But he, I thought one of these times we could come back and maybe he kind of beats the cook tent up a little bit or something. But, currently right now he seems to be a pretty well-behaved bear, and we're not going to just pack up and leave because we've got everything here. We're not going to, we're going to try not to make it too comfortable for him. But at the same time, there's grizzlies everywhere at that time of year.
Right.
And so, we are where we are. We're just going to try and be careful. And so with the trail cams, we got some pretty interesting pictures of him sitting there watching camp as the fire died down. But he never did come any closer.
Huh.
He never did anything else. There was never any tracks anywhere near any of the tents. Even while we were gone, he never went near the cook tent. There was a kind of a magic line that was drawn that he just said, okay, I'm just not comfortable coming in any closer than this.
Interesting.
If they could all be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but still, when you went out to the old outhouse, you were still, bringing a flashlight and your running shoes. Make sure you got your running shoes on.
For sure. As far as field dressing, are you? I guess with a moose, it's
you're dealing with a bigger
it's the same
animal.
ungulate, but bigger version, obviously.
Yeah.
Is there any tips and tricks as far as field dressing that kind of an animal, like ropes and?
Yeah, I mean, ropes are always handy. Obviously, a buddy is real good. I've had the odd dick client that wouldn't help at all.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like not at all.
Jeez.
Could you hold this leg? No. Are you kidding me? You won't even hold this damn leg?
Jeez.
So,
Yeah.
so definitely, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but it
Right.
happens. Definitely some rope so that you can kind of get him up onto his back. They are very large animals, but they're, to break them down as far as it goes to opening them up and cleaning them out, it's that bigger version, in my opinion, is almost easier than a smaller animal.
Yeah, we kind of found that with an elk for sure. It just makes
Yeah.
it a little bit easier. It's obviously heavier, but it's easier to deal with.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The flipping
all
them
the
over was
pieces-
the hard part.
Oh, and a moose, because of that big old hump on him, that ridge down his back, that can be
Right.
just trying to stabilize that can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Ropes work good. Sometimes we can kind of roll them up with the long legs help with a little bit more leverage. You can kind of get a good pull, and we'll roll maybe sometimes a log here and there and just try and get him so he'll stay on his back. So then we'll make the first incision, obviously from just kind of up in front of the brisket all the way down the brisket and then down the stomach and continue the line all the way down. So I usually skin back just a little bit so that I try not to get too much hair. But then from there, it's all about kind of splitting that brisket. Now, when you're dealing with something like a deer, even sometimes an elk, obviously if you have a saw, it's pretty good. But normally with even those animals, you can use kind of a sturdy knife. But with a moose, that's not going to be the case.
Right.
We got a local knife maker here, and he builds some pretty heavy duty knives, and so we've tested his knives and just kind of started them in there and just used like a big stick and beat it through, and decided, well, if we destroy the knife, good, because that's part of the test.
Right.
So far, good news for him, we didn't destroy any knives, but we were able to kind of beat that through that bony brisket. But a nice little, those little tiny saws that they've got, little trail saw or whatever, that works really well. So I would just concentrate on getting that entire rib cage separated. And then from there, that's when you can start reaching further up and kind of get a hold of that, cut the windpipe, and start that high. And then I usually kind of put a little, maybe 2 inches down or something. I'll put a little finger hole in the windpipe, something I can kind of hook my finger into, and then start pulling kind of down and out from there. And normally, with most bull moose, and especially when you're going for the meat, most of it is in behind the shoulder. So there's going to be a lot of blood up in that lung area. So that's going to be something that you have to get used to, because until you get accustomed to dealing with that much blood inside, you're almost cutting, almost kind of blindly. It's quite difficult unless you can kind of get them on his side a little bit and drain some of that cavity blood. It can be like a big swimming pool in there.
Jeez.
And you're just kind of feeling around going, oh boy, I hope I'm not cutting something I shouldn't be.
Right.
Once you get more comfortable doing it, you can kind of come down that heart lung, bring that out, and then the diaphragm. Of course, that's going to separate, the stomach and all those areas, from the heart lung area. And that diaphragm, that big ring of muscle on a moose is actually, it's quite a muscle. Like it's quite a trim job that you have to do to get all that out. And then once you kind of get through that diaphragm and just keep pulling, it's always good if you got a second guy and he can kind of pull and you can kind of work your knife, and just get him opened up just like a great big deer. And if you do end up having to leave him, I do try and get as much, if it's a bit warm out, I'll try and either get him broke down enough, get the quarters off, or at the very least get some skin peeled back. The other simple thing that you can do, if you know that it's just going to get too late, you're not going to make it out, you're going to get the guts out of him, he's going to be able to cool. But if the area is kind of soft and spongy and maybe mossy or marshy, you do have to be careful about those, for that whole front shoulder area, getting down in there and retaining its heat. You can bone sour it pretty quickly.
Right.
So what I'll do is run and find a couple of poles or rails, and I'll lay them down so that I can kind of roll him up onto that, so that a little bit of air can circulate through there.
Good point. Nice. Well, before we move on, anything else you want to add to the moose side of things?
Let's see, just it's a hell of a pack.
Yeah, good
and they
to know.
taste great. They absolutely taste great. We rely on it. My family and I, my kids almost don't know what the taste of beef is,
Right.
unless they go into town. We rely on moose and elk, but definitely moose number one. And,
Nice.
and they taste great. We've had big rutted out bulls that taste just as good as a younger bull. Sometimes they can maybe be a little bit chewier, but for the most part, I would say that it's pretty right across the board, pretty average. They're going to just have a good taste, nothing too wild, nothing too strong. We call it bush beef because it's so close to beef, a little bit leaner. But yeah, great stuff. And once you start hunting moose and start hanging around these big boogers, you really get hooked for life.
Yeah, I bet.
Awesome.
Good. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here. We would be forever bothered if we didn't ask you about your hunt with Joe Rogan. Do you mind telling us a bit about how that all came together? And
Yeah, okay. It was pretty interesting. I had some friends in the NRA, and there was a bunch of calls made. And I had a bunch of mutual friends, and I was actually out guiding, and somebody reached out and said, "Hey, Mike, would you mind? We've got this guy. He's, they didn't tell me who he was. Just said, he's kind of a celebrity, wants to kind of low key, blah blah blah." And I said, "Sure. When are we going to book him? Next year?" They said, "No, this year." I said, "When?" I said, "Well, he's only freed up in November." I said, "Well, it's a hell of a time to hunt a moose." And so it was kind of funny because we had a little bit of back and forth, and they said, "Well, look, if you don't think you can handle it." And I said, "Oh, you listen here." So anyway, it was all great. Then I found out who it was, and I was pretty excited. I mean, I'm a big MMA fan, and I've known of Joe for quite a few years, just with some of the other things that he had done as well. I mean, he was obviously somebody that, between TV and movies and but more importantly for me was the MMA connection.
Right.
And so I said, okay, yeah, let's do her. So we brought him in, and we had, at the time, Ben O'Brien was with Peterson's Hunting, and Peterson's Hunting wasn't even aware of this hunt going on. Like, this was kind of just a quiet, let's see if we can make this work. So I really thought I had my work seriously cut out for me. I mean, that time of year, that post-rut hunting, typically your big bulls, they're going to go back into some dark hole, and they're going to, lick their wounds and try and get enough feed into them to survive the winter. They're not going to come to any calls, and they're not going to be easy to sneak up on. So I thought, man, this isn't going to work at all. Well, we had a smaller bull that we had gotten probably the week before. It was just a young bull, and Joe happened to see that set of antlers, and he said, this is after I think day 1 or 2. He said, "Well, I'd shoot that." So what are you talking about? And he said, "Well, I'd kill that." And I said, "Well, I thought you were here for a big one." And he said, "Dude, I don't give a shit about horns. I don't care about that. I want to eat this thing." Oh, okay. So anyway, we were traveling and going into places and putting on some pretty good hikes. We had spotted a really cool looking bull up high, but in fact, he did have some cows with him. I'm not certain why. It was so late, but we tried to put the move on him a couple times, but those friggin' cows, there was just too many of them. And he was kind of, they would let him know that we were there, and they'd take off and he'd follow. So traveling around with Joe, as you all know, not only is he just an absolutely great human being, but he's also a comedian. Right. So there was way too much laughter. We should not have been successful at all. It was crazy, and we were en route back to the place where we were going to do some more hiking, and I went by this little clearing, and I seen this young bull on the far side of the clearing, and I slowed down carefully because we were in a pickup truck headed to a spot to hike, and I said, "I seen a bull." And he got real excited, and I said, "Whoa." So I said, "He's not much of a bull." And again, he made certain that I completely understood that he didn't give a shit about antler size. Right. I said, okay, then we're good. And so we went back, and he made a beautiful shot, and it was his first. I think he'd shot a bear up until that point, and that was it. So he was super excited. We were all so excited. It was this big weight, when Joe was able to connect with a bull, this big weight was lifted. So we were all super excited. So when I say all, Ben O'Brien was there as well, and then he brought Sam, and Sam Soholt is a photographer. He's done some incredible stuff, including the cover shot.
Right.
And so we made our way down to the bull, and Joe pulled out a knife that he had given to him as a gift, and I think it was the crew of the Comedy Store or something. I don't know. It was something really neat, like just completely unexpected. Like, where did you get that? Who gave that to you? And he just wanted me to point out. He wanted the entire experience. He wanted to do it. He wanted me to give him pointers. I kind of held some legs and just let him out of it. And
That's awesome.
It was so cool. It was so super cool, and he was so excited. Like every inch of movement that he was doing, he was just so excited and so thankful for. So we even got the pack out. Now we didn't have to bring backpacks in, and if you're accustomed to packing quarters, and you leave the legs long, you can, like I was saying, the legs are long, you can use them like kind of leverage, and you can kind of flip them up under your shoulder and pack them out. So he got to, and of course the, that iconic quarter on his back, that's kind of where that all came from. Nice. And so anyway, we packed it out and had a great time, did all the photo shoots here back at the ranch. And it was only at that time when they were sending pictures back to the magazine did the powers that be even realize what had just gone on. So it was a really neat time. I think we had one, because it was cut short, and I think we had like 1 day left or something. Like we were cut short on time, and we decided, hell, let's head back to the same area that we seen the bull up high, and let's see if we can do some glassing and make another approach. And again, way too much laughter, come around a corner, not prepared at all, and there's two bulls, and two good bulls on the road. So I'm thinking we're prepared to go out on an all-day hike. Like we're going to be, and that's the way hunting goes. I mean, sometimes it just happens that they're on the road. And these roadways that we're using are remote. They're not down a major highway. Right. Way back roads. And so I kind of, stuck my head out and started to beller because they decided to leave. And this time Ben was up to bat. And the larger of the two, no, he realized that the gig was up. He was I couldn't slow him down for nothing. But the next size one, he stood there and enough time for Ben, another super cool human being. If you ever get a chance to talk to Ben O'Brien, he's now with Yeti. Yeah, love the dude. Love him. Can't say enough great stuff about him. And anyway, so he made a really good shot, and the bull went down. And then when he went to gather himself again, I think he was shooting this blazer, so he's able to just like kabam, kabam, and I think the second one was maybe over his back, and the bull kind of went to struggle to get up and kabam, nailed him again. So literally right on the side of the road, this thing kind of just like, all right, he's done, right? But he's still got the odd kick in him, and while we're still looking at each other going, wow, that just happened, Joe goes by us like 900 miles an hour. And I yell at him like, where are you going? What are you going to do? And he didn't even acknowledge me talking to him. And he just went running, and we all started laughing. I mean, if this bull gets up, what are we going to do? And so before we knew it, we were all kind of jogging behind him, and he just wanted the whole moment. He just wanted everything. He just wanted to feel and experience everything. And even as that kind of that final kick, as maybe as morbid as that would sound to some people, just to kind of be there was something that he just wanted to feel that moment. So it was just super duper cool. The way it all turned out was great. He was a great guy to have here. We did keep it quiet. We didn't know what to expect. We don't normally get tons of visitors out here, but, and I'm not saying that would have happened, but to respect him and what he was shooting for, we did keep it quiet. However, at one point, and my kids had to keep it quiet, and they loved him. At one point, we were a long ways out. It was one of the days where nothing was happening. The middle of the day, it had kind of warmed up. It was just dead. And in fact, everybody was barely keeping their eyes open. And Joe made a smart remark asking about a Starbucks. And I kind of knew of a loop road that I could make her all the way back into town. And while these guys are sleeping anyway.
Right.
And by the time they woke up and realized, I said, well, you said you wanted a Starbucks. And he was like, wow, are you serious? This is crazy. So they went in to the store. I stayed out. I was kind of sending a couple messages real quick. And when I walked back in, they had ordered, but then they had, I guess, gone to the magazine rack or something. And so when I get up to the counter, there's suddenly a buzz of people. Like there's these people just buzzing around, and the young girl that was there, I said, what's going on? And she said, they think they've seen somebody famous. I said, really? Who did they see? And she said, Joe Rogan. She said, but that's not even possible. And I said, really? And she said, is it? I said, I don't know. And so he came around the corner, and they then of course realized who it was.
Right.
And he was so super cool with everybody.
Nice.
He talked to them, he joked with them. It was really neat. And then when my daughter was traveling home on the bus, there was a radio announcement that there was a rumor floating around that quite possibly Joe Rogan was in the little town of Quesnell. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It was a super cool time, but I can't say enough great things about these guys. I'm not just blowing smoke up their ass.
Yeah,
really, really super nice people. This last New Year's, not this New Year's, but the one previous to that, Joe got a hold of us and said, hey guys, I'd like you to come down and see the fights. And he said, hey, just, kind of call this person. And so we were trying to, okay, we don't want to miss that. We want to do that. And so the number he gave us to talk to was actually his manager. And while we were trying to make all the plans, she said, no, what are you doing? No, like he's made all the plans. It's done. Like it's done. He's just bringing you down here. So it was,
nice.
that was a real cool thank you. And it was a lot of fun.
Unreal.
Looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And I think we like to, we like to touch on the story about Joe as well, just because he seems to be one of those personalities out there that's helping hunting overall. And he seems like a genuine and intuitive person that kind of understands the details around what we're doing, and he appreciates it. So, to hear him say he doesn't care about the horns, he just wants to eat it. We definitely have heard him mention that on his show as well. So it just brings a whole new perspective, and he's got a ton of followers. So it's a good story.
Absolutely, and it was super cool when we were talking about, okay, now we've got 500 pounds of cut and wrap meat. How do we ensure that it gets there? And of course, our biggest challenge is the border. They can't. So many people want to bring their meat back, and we definitely go over and above everything we can, and to ensure that we make that happen. But the biggest challenge is when it comes to shipping is the border will not. There's no guarantee on whether or not it's going to be 2 hours or 2 days.
Right.
So of course, if it thaws out. So one day I came home and my wife said, "Hey, I hope you're up for a road trip." That's what we're doing. So we ended up driving that entire thing down right to Joe's house. And
wow.
And a lot of that was because we too, he was very surprised and super thankful, but I also recognized what he was going to be able to do for our industry, the audience that he could reach and the people that he could touch. So being able to, for the next year or two or whatever, enjoy this and share this moose with everybody that he could, I knew what it would mean to hunting as a whole, not just within British Columbia, but everywhere. And so it was important for us to be able to do that.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool, man. We've kind of eaten up quite a bit of your time here. Are you okay with one more point here before we let you go?
Okay.
Okay. Didn't take much convincing. You posted a photo of a wolf that I think is hanging on your wall somewhere. And we were just talking about Joe, and he's mentioned this wolf a few times. We like to end on hunting story. Do you mind giving us the backstory behind this one?
Yeah. I've never actually heard. I've talked to Joe about it. Of course, we had talked about it. And his version of it is very, very close. He remembers it very closely.
Yeah.
But so what had happened was I was out. I wasn't even really hunting at the time. I was out feeding cows, and while I did, I could hear one lone wolf in the distance, and so I thought, well, once I was done feeding cows, I'd maybe go and talk to this thing, and I do quite a lot of that, and it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to talk to wolves. they might sound mystical, but if you can just kind of mimic, not all their high pitchy stuff, but just kind of a long mournful howl, you can actually get a lot done with it. And so when I was done feeding, I just kind of walked away from the ranch and walked up kind of this open fir side hill, just up off the base of the hill by, a few yards. And the wolf was probably, I would say it was a good mile away, and over to my right and slightly above me. And so I started to howl, and it howled back a couple of times, so I knew it at least heard me, and I'd wait and remain patient. And then it covered some ground coming back my direction. So when it howled again, I could tell it was kind of trying to locate. So I would howl, and so anyway, this continued for probably about a good 15, 20 minutes. And there would be some times where it was pretty quiet, and then finally it would, throw out a locator call again. So it got to the point where up above me, so if you want to kind of picture the hill, we're in big open fir country. So there's no underbrush or anything, and it is wintertime. There's a bit of snow, and of course that's why I was feeding. And so up above the hill, there's kind of a ridge line that goes up above me and ends at about 80 yards. Then the hill continues on past there, but there's this little ridge in front of me, kind of this little hill, and then it tops out at probably about 80 yards. And the wolf seemed to kind of come into the back of that, and I could hear it back there because it was whimpering, and it was whimpering like a pup. And so anyway, I thought, wow, okay, well it's a young one, and I didn't figure I was going to get much of a shot. And keep in mind, we use these opportunities because any of the ranching that I've ever done, except for current right now, has been remote, like very remote, where predators are a constant, something that we end up having to deal with, especially when it comes to cattle and calving. And so if you get an opportunity, you usually act on it. So anyway, up above me, he's whimpering, and he would whimper right in front of me, and then kind of over to the left. And then he seemed to kind of move back, and it sounded like a pup. And so I thought, I better slide a shell in here, because what's going to happen is he's just going to peek up, and if I have too much movement, he's gone. But he continued to kind of whimper. They did howl, or it at the time I thought it was one, howled right behind the hill at about 80 yards. So at that point I thought, okay, we got her. But that's when the whimpering kind of started, and almost excited whimpering, which was really odd. And so I thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my head face downhill and howl almost as though I'm leaving, almost as though I'm going. And I realized that, probably my opportunity was going to be a wolf just peeking over the top at about 80 yards.
Right.
And so I turned my head and I howled downhill, and by the time, and I wanted to make my movements fluid, like I didn't want to just jerk my head around, like I just you howl long and slow, and then I just kind of swung around and looked back, and when I looked back up, I had two wolves coming down at me as hard as they could, two straight on and one from the side.
Wow.
As hard as they could run. I had enough time that I had my rifle almost sort of in the ready when I howled, just because of the way I carried it. I swung up. I didn't get an opportunity to even look down through the scope. It was too close. The wolf was in the air when I fired. Jesus. My bullet actually ran up its forearm and hit it in the shoulder.
Wow.
And so I backed up. As I was backing away and trying to jack in another round, I was looking at the other ones because I didn't know what they were going to do. I could tell that this one was hit. But the other ones gathered themselves. As I jacked in another round, this one was still very alive. So upon the second shot, because it wasn't going down,
wow.
On the second shot, I hit it again, and it acted like it didn't even react because it was just kind of through the rib cage. I knew I hit it because it was right there. It was a few feet away. The other two at that point had stopped, and they had then the one that came in left headed left, and the one that came in from the front had turned and gone left as well. I quickly jacked in another round, hit it again the third time, flopped it over on its side. Even at that point, it reached over, and the original leg that I hit, it grabbed it in its mouth in its teeth and lifted its head looking at me and still growling.
Wow.
It was spraying blood out onto the snow, and just, I mean, I don't want to make them into monsters or not. I think wolves are the greatest things on the planet. I
Right.
mean, I really like them. I love that they're out there. But I'm telling you, at this moment, this thing stared at me. Obviously, it was hurting, and obviously, it was dying. But I didn't see any fear in its eyes.
Wow.
It was like, come back here. That's nothing but a scratch. And so I went to turn to walk away. Only at that point was I then hit with adrenaline, and that's when my knees kind of wanted to give out on me a bit because I realized what had just happened. I can still remember to this day thinking in my mind, there's no way this is happening. Like when I looked at those wolves coming at me, like this, it's impossible. And the lead one was that real dark one, almost black, real dark. So it was almost a shadow. Like it was almost in my mind, it was almost a shadow. And I just remember thinking like, there's no way it can't be happening. But then as it made that final jump, I was very fortunate enough to squeeze. I would not want to be in that position ever again because I don't know if I would react the same, but I was able to do it. And, I made it to the bottom of the hill. I had a little ranch hand. He looked like a little Gabby Hayes. He had a little kind of a stocky little dude with a little white beard and a funny shaped little cowboy hat. And, he goes walking up there and he sees the wolf and he sees the tracks and he sees the hits and he goes, damn, he said, there's people that can shoot 200 yards. Now, keep in mind, this is a little iron-sighted guy that wears some pretty thick glasses.
Right.
So 200 yards for him is a stretch. He goes, oh, boy. He said, there's people that can shoot 200 yards. He said, damn, there's people that can shoot 300 yards. But hot damn, that's some shooting. So he was pretty excited. I was
Holy
still
shit.
trying to gather myself going, holy hell, what just happened? So yeah, the wolf is now I've got the wolf in my house. But yeah, that's the way she went down. And to this day, I've talked to some different biologists, and I completely agree with them that in the very beginning of the interaction that I had with the wolves, they thought I was a wolf. My challenge is when they broke that hill on the run, I wasn't hiding behind anything.
Right.
I wasn't even hiding behind a tree, nothing. I was standing there. And maybe they didn't quite identify me. I'm not sure, but they were coming like as fast as a wolf can run and downhill towards me. There was never a break in their stride until I fired. And I know, thinking about it, if one of them had hit me, I probably would have toppled over, and before I could have ever thought of regaining myself, the other two would have been on me.
Yeah, right.
So
Crazy.
It's very possible it would have ended very differently. Maybe I would have been the first case of whatever. I don't know. They just didn't have that opportunity. So,
Jeez.
and since I've used, we've howled in quite a few wolves. We're pretty dang good at it. And a lot of times when they come in as though they want to kick some ass. So it's not a circumstance that you don't want to be prepared for. It's
Right.
something that you kind of want to be set up for, because they may howl at a tree line, and if you're in a little bit of a clearing, they may hold up there for a split second, but when they break the trees, typically it's going to be fairly quick.
Yeah,
But it is a super cool thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like you had some Liam Neeson in you at that moment.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, that's that is true. Yeah.
Oh, that's a hell of a story, man. And a great way to end things off here. Appreciate your time. Love to do this again at some point. And if you're ever down this way, make sure you get in touch and we'll meet up.
You betcha. We'll stay connected, and yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for your time, man. We really appreciate it.
Okay, guys, have a good one.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
Take care. Bye-bye. Holy shit. What a way to start off the year. That was
I mean, you don't think of wolves as, you think about grizzly bears being a danger out there, but obviously you got to be careful with wolves as well.
yeah, for sure.
I actually have a story about some Fortis folks that I work with that went up. They were actually at a river below us when we were up there. They were there the week earlier.
Oh, really?
And they had gone up, and at one point they were standing around the fire, and this lone wolf had popped his head out and was just looking at them as they were standing around the fire. So they kind of reached for the gun.
Wow.
They didn't end up pulling the trigger or anything like that. The next day they all split up and separated, kind of went off on their own.
Yeah.
And they were looking for elk. And one of the guys, Darren, was sitting out there by himself, and he was waiting. As the day got later on, he thought maybe I'll take a nap before, last couple hours of the day. So he's going to take a nap. He's going to take a snack first, unwraps this granola bar, as he pulls it out of his pocket and starts unwrapping it, he looks up and there's this wolf staring at him. It poked its head right out of the bush right beside him. It was about 15 feet away.
Wow.
So he reached for his gun and he pulled the trigger before he could even get it close to aiming at the wolf.
Oh.
So the shot goes off. The wolf gets scared, runs away. That's kind of how that ended. But the nickname for the two of them now is Kibbles and Bits.
Nice.
But I don't know. It's another wolf story, I guess. But you gotta keep your eyes open. Apparently,
yeah, you definitely do, man. Sweet. The moose side of things, man. Tons of good info there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I just remembered we had a question submitted to us regarding fire and how the burns affect these animals. I totally forgot to ask. We'll find out for you, and we'll report back on the next episode we do. We got too engulfed in that conversation, so I apologize for that. But man, that was awesome. Good storytelling.
for sure.
Yeah. So
We'll keep in touch.
Yeah. Anything you want to add?
No, I'm just excited to
Start
go
planning?
moose hunting.
Yeah, me too. Sweet. Well, first episode of 2018. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Cheers.
And let's get a little clink before we
Okay, make this a loud one.
try again. There we go.
There you go.
Cheers.
Cheers.